We are on chapter 25 of the Adventist Home. Chapter 25 of the Adventist Home is one of those chapters that makes me sad because we've lost our way as a church, and because I know there are so many people who would love to do it, who'd love to follow this. Okay, actually, I don't know that many. I'm lying. I know someone close to me who would love to obey what God has said in His Word, but can't at the moment. So that is the part that makes me sad about this next chapter. The people who would love to obey but can't. And the people who can definitely obey, even without sacrifice, as mentioned earlier, even without making a sacrifice, as mentioned later in the chapter, but they don't, yet they know they should. It's different if people don't know that there are fatherless or motherless children out there. It would be interesting to know how many people know that there are children, how many people don't know that there are children who need parents. But it takes a lot. So yeah, it takes a lot to obey this. And it's one of those things that in the church we are not teaching. I have not heard, and I grew up, I heard nobody teaching about taking in the fatherless, being a father, a mother to them. It was not spoken of. I still, up to today, have not heard an Adventist of any kind of Adventist, even those who claim to be present truth, who rain down fire and brimstone on our church, who think the SDA church is going to hell, or the ones that only keep pointing out the wrong things the Adventist church is doing. I've never heard them saying, why is the Adventist church not adopting? Why are they not teaching adoption? I've never heard those people saying, we have adopted. It's God's will. We are not giving a full message. Adventists, Laodicea, there are 144,000. Where are you? We need to be speaking out on every truth God has given us. Speaking of those who desire to but can't, I was reminded back in 2020, 2 homeschool families decided they were going to travel throughout South Africa and interview any willing homeschool families. So I volunteered to do it, mainly because I wanted to show that, contrary to what our ruling party says, all races homeschool. And so I went to the meeting that was done in Somerset West. And as we were talking about our families, a mother of 4 was asking about my 4 children. At the time, I had 4, and I told her how we adopted 2 of our children. In fact, it was part of the documentary speech, because I mentioned how we are flexible. The children, my older children, had asked to do school when the younger children, the babies, were napping, so that when they're awake, they could also then play with them instead of doing school and only I play with the children. So she looked at me, this woman, and with tears in her eyes, she said, I would love to adopt. I would even love to foster, and I have begged my husband over and over, please, can't we become a foster family? They had space, enough space. But her husband said no. All the time he kept saying no. And this woman wept. There's also a 50-year-old where my husband had once preached on adoption at another church, Weinberg Church. She contacted me to ask how can she adopt, but at age 50 she was too old, deemed too old to adopt a baby. So I suggested that she look for older children. Yes, that's complicated, but nothing should be easy. She can adopt older children at age 50, or you can foster. There are ways to do it. If your heart is moved, do it. Right. First we come to the children who are born within the church. Many a father has died. Again, this is one of those where I think I highlighted every something in every single paragraph. I'm so sorry. But I don't want to paraphrase it either and just give the highlights. I will read it. And hey, maybe you're one of those who's joining us and you haven't studied it. So here for you is a I've only left out 1 or 2 lines per paragraph. Many a father who has died in the faith And the reason why I want to read it as it is instead of paraphrasing is that I want you to hear what God said to his servant. I don't want it to be oh, Mrs. Nkomo interpreted it this way. I want us to hear what the words are and then focus on what they mean for us. Many a father who has died in the faith, resting upon the eternal promise of God, has left his loved ones in full trust that the Lord would take care of them. And how does the Lord provide for these bereaved ones? He works a miracle upon human hearts, expelling selfishness from the soul and unsealing the fountains of benevolence. He tests the love of his professed followers by committing to their tender mercies the afflicted and bereaved ones. God will take care of my children means people of God will take care of my children. And that's another reason why it's empty when people just say oh, God will take care of you. What are you doing to help the situation? That's the question. What are you doing to help the situation? And I mean that in every sense, any kind of situation, not here where there's a father who has died and he believes that the church will take care of his children. There is a wide field of usefulness before all who will work for the Master in caring for these children and youth who have been deprived of the watchful guidance of parents and the subduing influence of a Christian home. Many of them have inherited evil traits of character, and if left to grow up in ignorance, they will drift into associations that lead to vice and crime. These unpromising children need to be placed in a position favorable for the formation of a right character, that they may become children of God. God expects us to be useful in many ways, and God wants us to take the most unpromising and give them the best chance to be producers of fruit, just like we are meant to be producers of fruit. And just because their parents were evil in some way, just because we might know that the parents had evil traits, does not mean we then can say, well, oh no, we shouldn't touch tainted blood. We shouldn't deal with people whose genes are so terrible. I mean, who knows what will happen with this child? What if this child becomes an axe murderer or something stupid like that? Given most killers are not adopted. So, but that's one of the things that in my culture is a specific. Well, actually, I think I've heard it about. I think I've heard many people say it in different cultures. But what if the child turns against you? We're not raising the children for ourselves, we're raising them for God. Biological children turn against us. Biological children have stolen from their parents. We've got addicts who are biologically related to their parents, who have stolen, lied, cheated. We have children who have killed their parents, biological parents. That is no excuse. And God didn't say to his son, yes, Jesus, you may go and die because all of them will be saved. God sent his son even though he knew most of them would not be saved. It's not about the outcome, it's about us planting the seed. God wants us to plant the seed. God needs us to plant the seed even in the children who are coming from a heritage of thieves, a heritage of drunkards. God can switch off those genes. You just need to help him get the chance to do so. Fatherless and motherless children are thrown into the arms of the church, and Christ says to his followers, take these destitute children, bring them up for me, and ye shall receive your wages. I have seen much selfishness exhibited in these things, unless there is some special evidence that they themselves are to be benefited by adopting into their family those who need homes. Some turn away and answer, no. They do not seem to know or care whether such are saved or lost. What an indictment. We are born in order to help save as many as possible, but we don't care. Okay, I'm going to repeat the sentence. They do not seem to know, okay, whether such are saved or lost. That, they think, is not their business. With Cain, they say, am I my brother's keeper? They are not willing to be put to inconvenience or to make any sacrifice for the orphans, and they indifferently thrust such ones into the arms of the world, who are sometimes more willing to receive them than are these professed Christians. There's a difference between a true Christian and a professed Christian. A true Christian will say yes. A true Christian will, like Job, seek out those who need homes and bring them in. But the professed Christians say, nah, we're not interested. In the day of God, inquiry will be made for those whom heaven gave the opportunity of saving. But they wished to be excused and would not engage in the good work unless they could make it a matter of profit to them. I have been shown that those who refuse these opportunities for doing good will hear from Jesus, as ye did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me. And then it tells us to read Isaiah 58, verse 5 to 11. And so let us read it. I know it's about the Okay, this is the chapter. Cry aloud, spare not, tell Israel how sinful they are. It's that chapter. Is it such a fast that I have chosen, God asks, a day for man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head as a bulrush and to spread sackcloth and ashes under him? Wilt thou call this a fast and an acceptable day to the Lord? Is not this the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke? Is it not to deal thy bread to the hungry, and that thou bring the poor that are cast out to thy house? When thou seest the naked, that thou cover him, and that thou hide not thyself from thine own flesh? Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thine health shall spring forth speedily, and thy righteousness shall go before thee. The glory of the Lord shall be thy rearward. Then shalt thou call, and the Lord shall answer. Thou shalt cry, and he shall say, Here I am. If thou take away from the midst of thee the yoke, the putting forth of the finger and speaking vanity, and if thou draw out thy soul to the hungry, and satisfy the afflicted soul, then shall thy light rise in obscurity, and thy darkness be as the noonday. And the Lord shall guide thee continually, and satisfy thy soul in drought, and make fat thy bones, and thou shalt be like a watered garden, and like a spring of water, whose waters fail not. God has a reward. It's not earthly. It doesn't say you will not suffer. You will have to sacrifice to take these children. You will have to give up a lot to take in the children and youth who need it. Isn't the glory of God's righteousness shining upon us worth it? Some who have not children of their own should educate themselves to love and care for the children of others. Educate yourselves to love and care. This means that for too many people, it's not natural to love others, to love other children and want to nurture them. If it's not natural for you, and especially if you are childless, learn. Learn. Watch videos. Read books. Learn. They may not be called to go to a foreign field of labor, but they may be called to work in the very locality in which they live. In place of giving so much attention to pets, lavishing affection upon dumb animals, let them exercise their talent upon human beings who have a heaven to win and a hell to shun. That's one of my pet peeves. An animal is an animal is an animal is a dumb animal, as in it can't talk. It's not a soul that has a heaven to win and a hell to shun. Fur baby, it's still got fur. Don't adopt a pet, go get one. You adopt children, not pets. Children and animals are not the same, as much as those evil ones who view them as equal say so. No matter how much they say it is, no matter how much they say, but we love them, there's a problem then with those people. Anybody who loves an animal to the same degree as they would love a child, a human child, has a problem, a heart problem. Place your love upon the homeless little ones that are around you. Instead of closing your heart to the members of the human family, see how many of these little homeless ones you can bring up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. See how many. There is sacrifice involved. There is an abundance of work for everyone who wants work to do. Oh, yes, there is. I remember the first time when we really looked up adoption. I think I did, but it was true. The stats by, these Sunday keepers, the stats were if every Christian family were to adopt even one child, every so-called Christian family were to adopt even just one child, there would be no need for adoption. We would have solved the world's problems as so-called Christians. Forget, as she said, sometimes the world is even more loving to little children than we, the church, are, and that is so true. I've seen more non-Christians who have adopted than Christians, and definitely more than Adventists. By engaging in this line of Christian endeavor, the church may be increased in members and enriched in spirit. The work of saving the homeless and the fatherless is everyone's business. Don't say, I haven't been called. You have been called. Unless you're out there doing mission work, you have been called. If those who have no children and whom God has made stewards of means would expand their hearts to care for children who need love, care, and affection, and assistance with this world's goods, they would be far happier than they are today. Similar to the reason why we should have children. If we give our money to someone else, nurturing, loving, we would be far happier, content in doing God's will. So long as youth who have not a father's pitying care nor a mother's tender love are exposed to the corrupting influences of these last days, it is somebody's duty to supply the place of father and mother to some of them. Learn to give them love, affection, and sympathy. Again, learn. It's not going to come naturally. You must make the effort to say, Lord, help me to love these children. Because it's not, I didn't grow up like that. It's not my heart, sorry. I didn't grow up like that. We never discussed adoption, so I can't say I didn't grow up like that. But my heart has always cared about others. So it hit me the wrong way when we were in an afternoon program and the guest speaker said, come on, well, he was talking about love of sacrifice. I can't remember the theme, but he said, like, come on, think of it. How many of you here right now would bother to go and adopt some abandoned child who you know nothing about? Like, duh. His point was, duh, none of you would. And I was thinking, why is he's talking like he's saying, how many of you would go and clean up pig poop in a pig pen? That kind of never. None of us would ever do that. That's the way it came out.
So we said, well, we would, and we did. And it really touched him. So it seems the norm is not to love God's little innocent children and his young, tender youth. So learn to do so. You have to. All who profess to have a Father in heaven, who they hope will care for them and finally take them to the home he has prepared for them, ought to feel a solemn obligation resting upon them to be friends to the friendless and fathers to the orphans, to aid the widows, and be of some practical use in this world by benefiting humanity. Then we come to ministers' wives, true godly ministers. The question has been asked whether a minister's wife should adopt infant children. I answer, if she has no inclination or fitness to engage in missionary work, that's a minister. A minister engages in missionary work. If she has no inclination or fitness to engage in missionary work outside her home and feels it her duty to take orphan children and care for them, she may do a good work. But let the choice of children be first made from among those who have been left orphans by Sabbath-keeping parents. Charity begins at home. If you know of any child within your church or any other church, obviously that would be the first place to begin. God will bless men and women as they, with willing hearts, share their homes with these homeless ones. But if the minister's wife can herself act a part in the work of educating others, she should consecrate her powers to God as a Christian worker. She should be a true helper to her husband, assisting him in his work, improving her intellect, and helping to give the message. And how will she give the message? The way is open for humble, consecrated women, dignified by the grace of Christ, to visit those in need of help and shed light into discouraged souls. They can lift up the bowed head. They can lift up the bowed down by praying with them and pointing them to Christ. We need door-to-door women. Women, you need to be ministering to these souls that are in their homes waiting for someone to reach them. We need the minister as he preaches. He should have his wife going into the door, into the homes, reaching those who can't be reached by a male minister. The women, the depressed. The women have a better way of reaching the downtrodden, the emotionally burdened. We are the soft ones. We can minister to the gentleman in his home, the brothers, the sisters, the cousins, the little ones. Such, the ministers' wives who are able to go around knocking on doors, speaking to people, praying with them, such should not devote their time and strength to one helpless little mortal that requires constant care and attention. They should not thus voluntarily tie their hands. So yeah, ministers' wives should adopt if they're not capable of going door to door, if they're not capable of praying with someone, if they're not capable of meeting them at the well and saying, hey, can you tell me about yourself? You look so tired, can I help you? Or going to the hospitals. You don't even have to go to the door. To the homes, I don't know why I keep saying door. Going to the hospitals to minister. Mowbray Maternity was open to people, volunteers. There are many worldly people who are aiming to help the mothers in the hospitals who have nothing when they're giving birth. Where are the ministers' wives and all Adventists' wives to do that work with the women out there in the hospitals, all kinds of hospitals, not only maternity? As far as lies in your power, make a home for the homeless. Let everyone stand ready to act a part in helping forward this work. The Lord said to Peter, feed my lambs. This command is to us, and by opening our homes for the orphans, we aid in its fulfillment. Let not Jesus be disappointed in you. Feed his lambs. It sounds like such a good ending to the chapter. But I go down to the last one. I will leave out the second last paragraph. because it's the same. It's the same thing. The second last paragraph says, present these children to God as a fragrant offering. Will you, okay, I'll read the last line. Will our people accept this holy trust? It is a holy and sacred thing to adopt or to foster, especially long-term fostering, where you can make a big difference in a child's life, guiding them through the years. Will you accept this trust? And of course, the time of trouble, times when the truth is not accepted, places where it's not accepted. Years ago, I was shown that God's people would be tested upon this point of making homes for the homeless, that there would be many without homes in consequence of their believing the truth. I've forgotten the woman's name, Mrs. something, I've forgotten her. She died alone in a horrible attic. Was it a basement? But it was a big deal. Sister White begged people to take her in. She had just recently come to the truth and she was alone. She had no family. She was saying, I could live with anybody Adventist. I just want to learn more. I want to be taken care of. And she wasn't old and feeble. She was still going to be quite helpful. But nobody took her in. She died cold, sick, and abandoned by every church member who knew about her. That is one of the cases. If you know her, please write her name in the comments. I don't know why her name has slipped my mind. But yes, she is one of those tragic cases, sick, unwanted, yet wanting the truth, and God's people who professed to believe the truth. So there'll be many who are homeless because they've chosen the truth. That is happening even today, even before the time of trouble. I know in the mission place we went to, children are being kicked out of home because they accepted the Adventist faith. So the missionaries have found a place for the child to study at the center and live there. What will you do if you hear about such a case and you have your home, you have space for that person? What will you do? Opposition and persecution would deprive believers of their homes, and it was the duty of those who had homes to open a wide door to those who had not homes. I have been shown more recently that God would specially test his professed people in reference to this matter. Christ for our sakes became poor, that we, through his poverty, might be made rich. He made a sacrifice that he might provide a home for pilgrims and strangers in the world seeking for a better country, even and heavenly. If God could become poor for us, so terribly poor, downtrodden, surely we should be able to do the same for him. Come in. Oh, take that off. It's gonna trip you. Surely we should be able to and willing to. Okay, we should. If God could become poor for our sake, it's nothing to share our wealth with others who need it and deserve it. May we pray hard, work hard, and do what we need to do.